Greetings, astrology friends. Evolutionary astrologer Shannon Gill here today. I wanted to come on and talk about the lunar eclipse in Scorpio that will be culminating on this Friday, May 5th. Just a little reminder that the eclipse window is actually 6 weeks long. So even though the energy is culminating on Friday with a lunar eclipse, we're actually in a cauldron or a spectrum or an orb of energy that began April 5th with a full moon in Libra and won't close until the new moon in Taurus on May 19th. Eclipse seasons are twice a year, every 6 months, and during this period, this orb of time, the energies can be quite intense. They can be very surreal in some ways, just odd. And this particular eclipse season has even more complexity to it because we have Mercury retrograde in Taurus. And so add to it this level of intensity, this incredible acceleration of the energies, but also the planet that rules our minds and our function and our communication going backwards. So there's this other layer of confusion or interruption with the functionality of our lives. So we know that eclipse season brings massive change. However, it's difficult sometimes to know exactly where the change is happening. Sometimes things happen quite abruptly, and other times, we have to consider that what is an eclipse? There's an obscuration of the light. So it may feel that our normal control mechanisms are temporarily thwarted, so that these higher forces can come in to reshuffle the cards of our lives. We can have an opportunity here to make massive leaps in our evolution. We also, if we're off track, may get rerouted. It's important to remember that what creates an eclipse is either a new or a full moon that is conjunct the nodal axis, which is the karmic destiny line. So the changes that are possibly occurring during an eclipse season are intricately connected to our soul's alignment, our soul's contract. So we can always lean in and trust that even if something happens that's quite shocking or painful, that it is for the greater good. There is a higher force that is working in our favor, painful or not. And don't get me wrong, amazing, wonderful, incredible, and exciting things occur during eclipses. Basically, the bottom line is that it's the magnitude of what is occurring is amplified. So it's good to pay attention. It's good to definitely slow down during an eclipse season because the grounds are shifting, the grounds are unstable, the energies are moving really quickly, and then put the backdrop of where we are collectively and this massive transformation going on the planet where the energies are already uprooting and basically we're going through this massive alchemical moment. So don't be surprised if there's a higher level of chaos in the environment at this time. So looking deeper at the context of the eclipses, so it's really helpful to know where they fall in your chart. So the first eclipse, April 19th, was at the 29th degree of Aries. We talked about that in depth if you want to go back and look at my previous YouTube on the Aries solar eclipse. It was the anaretic degree, the death degree, a crisis moment to begin something, to break through something, to birth something new, to initiate, to own our power. So that was 2 weeks ago. Now we are coming to the second half, which is the lunar eclipse, which is a full moon. So at any full moon, we know that there's a culminating energy. We know that something is completing. We know that something is ending. And with it being an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, it means that the cycle is further reaching. So we can look back at last October, November, at the previous eclipse cycle. And you can go back even further, but why don't we just start with going back 6 months and looking at last fall, the last eclipse season and Scorpio season, and just explore the material. What was going on in your world during that time? And then now feeling into the current moment, reflect upon what are the patterns? What is the repeating theme? Is there something that has come to an end in your life? And so it's in Scorpio, which is also about the end. Scorpio season is in the northern hemisphere when the leaves turn and they start to decay and they fall and they go into the underworld. Scorpio rules the process of regeneration. I always see Scorpio as like a snake. A snake is constantly letting go. A snake is constantly releasing that dead old skin. And so the more that we're able to embrace life as one continual process of death and rebirth, the more easeful we can move through, the more graceful we can be in the seasons of our lives. Now, I know I'm making this sound so simplistic, and Yet I think we all can agree that the process of death and rebirth is oftentimes quite intense. And there's a level of shadow work that is required anytime we're talking about Scorpio, because we don't often just wake up in the morning and be like, hey, it's a great day to evolve, let's heal today. It usually comes through some kind of suffering, and our suffering usually is hidden away somewhere. It's somewhere that we avoid, or we hide from, or we feel ashamed of. It has to do with the painful aspects of our lives. So when we think about the shadow realm, it's all things that are beneath the surface. Scorpio rules the metaphoric underworld. And so when we're talking about this need to come to an end, to let something go, in an eclipse, it could be that something arises that's quite painful, or that there's grief around this something that's ending, because perhaps it's a relationship, or perhaps, someone is getting let go from their job. And oftentimes, there's deeper elements of the psyche and the soul that's at play. And when we're talking about the eclipses, remember, we're talking about our soul's evolution, which has to do with coming to light with all the places inside of ourselves that we have locked away, that we have repressed. And for some of us, we are dealing with collective material, collective shadow. And we are all very aware that this is a very intense time of purging on the planet, of 2,000 years of corruption and deception. So this is big work. And inviting a level of compassion, bringing extra self-care, as I already mentioned, slowing down. Monks would say that thoughts, actions, and deeds take on 10,000 times their weight during an eclipse season. There's this real accelerating force. So being very mindful and very intentional can go a long way. Another dimension of Scorpio is our relationship to power. Power versus powerlessness, and the process of empowerment. So oftentimes that hero's journey, that process of journeying to the underworld, is connected to our process of empowerment, because essentially what this is the death of the ego. Whenever, the goddess Inanna descends into the underworld through the 7 gates, she is stripping off a layer of clothing at each gate, which was representative of all the distortions, the attachments, the ego illusions, the false beliefs, the addictions. And so there's something also, I think, to this eclipse season to be really mindful of, and in our self-reflection to be really honest with ourselves. If you remember, Saturn moved into Pisces in March and Pluto into Aquarius. So there's this acceleration of the transformation of humanity, but also this experience of collective dissolution. The structures, Saturn dissolving in the sign of Pisces, really requiring that we build this new infrastructure, which is going to come from alignment with the higher laws. And so, when we're looking at these eclipses and we're looking at Aries and Scorpio, there is a lot to do with what is our relationship to our ego? What is our relationship to the right use of power? What is our relationship to being in alignment with higher will, our personal will with a higher will? So maybe the invitation of what is needing to be released is quite personal on that level. Scorpio is also one of the signs that relates to our relationship dynamics. It has to do with the deep soul fusion between two, the sexual alchemy, the way in which the soul is able to evolve through that tantric oneness. It has to do with serving one another's accelerated ascension by dissolving or alchemizing the underworld elements. And so there also could be a level of relationship intensity coming up, a level of relationship shadow coming up, things that are really, really buried in possibly the sexual dimensions, or the dimensions around feeling safe in a relationship. That Scorpio archetype, because it has to do with that process of letting go, can often play out in realms of fear, of loss, trust issues, betrayal issues. So don't be surprised if some of this residual from the past might surface, or even from out of the blue, of a feeling of fear of loss. That's certainly in the zeitgeist right now, as we're ending an age and birthing another one, at the dawn of a new era. We're actually dying to how many generations before us? It's just the magnitude is almost inconceivable of how much change is right here now. And so the work that we do in our relationships and the work that we do individually is serving the collective evolution. And so we can trust that. And I love astrology for that reason, because it helps to depersonalize our journey. It helps to tap us into this larger symphony, this larger evolutionary journey that we're on. So whenever we're in an eclipse season, we're doing a big chunk of the work. So that's where we can trust. And that's why taking time for extra self-care, like I never work on eclipses because I've just learned the energy is really wild sometimes. And so if you're not able to take off work, then maybe just taking extra time to be reflective, taking a walk, sitting at your altar, and also reminding you that it's not just the energies on those 2 days. As I mentioned before, it's this orb of time. It's 6 weeks where things are whipping around. And even though it's a lunar eclipse on Friday, which is the culmination or an ending, it could be that that's when you're birthing something, or something might have been ending for you around the solar new moon eclipse on April 19th. So there's not this definitive linear thing that occurs. And so this is where we have to tap into more the archetypal realm, and knowing where the eclipses fall in your chart gives us so much information. And so you can look for that online, or you can obviously get in touch with an astrologer for that as well. So this full moon lunar eclipse is at 14 degrees Scorpio, Friday, May 5th. And it's interesting because, of course, every full moon means that the moon is being directly opposed by the sun. And at this eclipse, the sun is being sandwiched by Mercury retrograde in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus. So this gives another layer for us to look at. First of all, we already talked briefly about the fact that Mercury retrograde has been at play during this eclipse season. So there's this added layer of complexity, of confusion, of reflection. It's like we had this opportunity to initiate something with the Aries new moon, but then we're like, well, wait a minute, is that really the right direction? So there's been this sort of like non-linear experience of like, I think I'm moving forward. I think this is the right thing. But then the energies are just quite surreal right now. There's like this veil, there's this mist. So part of what we're called to do during an eclipse, that's why I always say to slow down and become more reflective, to pay attention to signs, because oftentimes it's not the best time to make any kind of major decision, because again, like the lights are out, right? So waiting until after the eclipse portal closes May 19th, that's when the integration starts. So now this eclipse coming on Friday has this added layer of complexity, because it's not just this full moon in Scorpio, but it's being opposed by Mercury retrograde and Uranus. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. I see Uranus as the lightning bolt of change in the hands of destiny. It's the storm. And so there is some element about information that we've been accruing or reevaluating with Mercury on one side of the sun, which, by the way, was in Cazimi a couple days ago on May 1st, which is when Mercury or any planet is right at the same degree as the sun. It's called a combustion, where the light of the sun is infusing that planet. So there's possibly been some kind of enlightening not knowing coming through, some kind of information, something new that maybe wasn't really revealed in this last few days, that is part of this equation with the eclipses. And then Uranus is on the other side, which is this energy that's there to wake us up. It's there to illuminate. So think about this archetypally. The Scorpio eclipse, the underworld, is everything hidden, but Uranus is there basically activating, unearthing, shining the light down beneath, so that we can't hide from ourselves anymore, or something can't be hidden from us anymore, or we can't be self-deceptive anymore, or we're not going to be in denial anymore, because the energies are like forcing evolution. It's like that alchemical cauldron where everything is just molting inside. And you think about the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. I mean, I use this all the time. It's totally elementary. But astrology reflects nature, and the simplicity of it is so profound. The caterpillar turns to total mush, right? Complete disintegration before it becomes a butterfly. And we're very much in that process as a humanity right now, leaving the Pisces age and entering the age of Aquarius. And as I said, in these eclipses, we're doing a big chunk of the work. And the Scorpio archetype is saying, it's time to shed the skin. You've outgrown it. It's time to let go of that relationship, that addiction, that false belief, that past life story. Whatever it is that's holding you stuck or confined in some kind of a narrative that is not the larger story. It's not the higher calling. It's not the frequency of your highest expression. And so therefore, there's something that we have to surrender. So that could be a good mantra. It's like, I surrender to the higher power, the higher orchestration of the universe. And if you're not sure what that is, we can ask, please show me. Please show me where I am blind to my own evolutionary needs. Or please help me to trust the process of surrender. Because we become very, very attached. And that's the polarity point of Scorpio, is the Sun and Uranus and Mercury and Taurus. It's all the things we love. It's all the things we want to hold on to and maintain. And yet that's not how evolution works. And so we're in one of those moments where we have to be brave. So we can look towards that Aries solar eclipse at the anaretic degree, calling all warriors. You know, birth is active. And so in order to continue the momentum that we have on this evolutionary journey, we have to be the brave warrior, and we also have to surrender. So it's like this dance, this masculine and feminine sort of action and active mode, and also receptivity and letting go and yielding. So this is sort of the overarching energies that are upon us. Expect this week to feel even more odd, unstable, emotional. Full moon lunar eclipses, they're bringing everything to the surface. So that's where making space in your life to feel, to reflect, you know, sitting with a friend and letting them hold space for you and vice versa. Just slowing down. Everything is happening so fast that there's a real danger of disconnecting or of bypassing or dissociating. And that is going to create a fracture in the consciousness. And so we have to make space for the processing. Certainly there's those that over-process, and I also recommend that you find balance with that because that can certainly waste time and slow the evolutionary process down as well. But I think that most people fall into the category of overly busy. One of my first teachers said that the disease of our time is busyness. So just wanting to really emphasize that creating space is really important. And as always, I'm so grateful for you tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel, leave comments. I love to hear from you, hear about your experience. I'm like a researcher. I love to know how these eclipses are affecting you. And just so many blessings. Thank you so much for being a part of the shift.